We're unpacking the core principles of what we're calling the cold art of not caring. Now, to be clear, this isn't about being heartless. It's about survival, authority, and taking back emotional control. Let's uncover this together.
So, does being nice actually make you controllable? It's a heavy question, right? It challenges this lifelong conditioning we've basically all faced. I mean, since childhood, institutions, our families, society as a whole, they've drilled into us that caring endlessly makes you a stronger, better, just a more human being. But does it? The source material we're unpacking today actually argues the exact opposite. It suggests that this constant need to be nice and fully transparent, it actually makes you incredibly vulnerable and highly controllable.
Section 1. The trap of overcaring. The absolute crucial point to grasp here is how over-investing your emotions literally turns you into a puppet. When you care too much about what everyone thinks, you're essentially handing out invisible strings to the people around you, letting them pull you in whichever direction serves them best. Society demands that you be an open book, right? They promise that caring equals strength. But the raw truth? The more you care, the easier you are to read, and the easier you are to trigger. Manipulators are actively looking for this. They throw out little provocations just to see if you'll snap. And if you do, well, they know exactly how to break you.
Let's look at a really interesting objective case study mentioned in the source material. Public figure Dhruv Rithi. Now, regardless of where you stand on his specific views, whether you agree or disagree, he perfectly illustrates the mechanics of this cold art. The guy faces millions of opinions, extreme praise, and intense outrage on a daily basis. Yet he maintains a completely solid stance. There's no frantic over-explaining, no emotional breakdowns on camera, no begging for universal approval. By just refusing to bend the noise, he retains his power and completely controls his own narrative.
Section 2. Breaking the Dobby conditioning.
You know Dobby from Harry Potter, right? Consider the Dobby mindset, constantly seeking validation, apologizing for basically just existing, shrinking yourself down to avoid conflict. It leads to severe mental exhaustion, and ironically, it empowers the exact people who are stepping all over you. Now contrast that with the Gus Fring mindset from Breaking Bad. Silent authority, absolutely zero over-explanation. Fring commands a room not by pleading to be understood, but by holding his emotional cards incredibly close to his chest.
But to actually make that jump from Dobby to Gus Fring, you gotta watch out for this major trap. Fast emotional bonds. Have you ever met a colleague or an acquaintance who tries to get incredibly deep and vulnerable with you, like almost immediately? The source warns that this is very often a strategic manipulation tactic. They use this false vulnerability to bypass your logical defenses, sneak right into your emotional center, and basically map out your cracks so they can exploit them later.
Section 3. Machiavellian mystery and control.
All right, we're shifting gears here from being a passive victim to actively taking control of your environment. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." Power doesn't belong to the person who feels the most. It belongs to the person who can control how they feel. You must never reveal your true emotional state to everyone. Maintaining a sense of mystery, that gives you the ultimate upper hand.
So how do we actually apply this? Well, it's a three-step process. First, observe the situation. Second, hide your true emotional state. And third, project controlled charisma. The source actually compares this to the strategic masking seen in the movie American Psycho. Now, obviously, you don't have to be fake in your daily life with your trusted loved ones. But in high-stakes situations, like navigating a toxic workplace or a tough negotiation, you absolutely must wear a mask.
Because think about it, if you don't wear that mask, you're constantly leaking information. Manipulators, think of someone like Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, they map your behavioral triggers. Things like over-explaining yourself, reacting instantly the second you're provoked, or even just double texting out of anxiety. All of that acts as an emotional leash. You are basically handing them the exact data they need to control you. Section 4. The power of absolute silence.
Machiavelli noted something really profound in chapter 25 of The Prince. He said, "He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command." Real authority never comes from emotional pleading or reactive chaos. Never. It comes from remaining incredibly calm and in complete command of your reactions. When you show that you're completely indifferent to the noise, you create this unshakable psychological authority. Here's the thing. Over-explaining is a hidden weakness. The desperate need to be completely understood almost always stems from insecurity. Imagine you're on a high-stakes sales call and you pitch a high price. The client balks. If you start over-explaining why it's so expensive,
you instantly look weak. But if you confidently state your price and just stay absolutely silent, you force the other person to overthink, to fill that awkward void, and ultimately to fold.
Moving on to Section 5, becoming unrewarding to manipulators.
Machiavelli definitely did not sugarcoat human nature. He viewed people as often being ungrateful, fickle, and false. And the core takeaway here is that you should never, ever overinvest your emotions into unstable, dysfunctional people. If you recognize that someone is constantly playing games, any emotional investment you make is guaranteed to yield a negative return. We have to actively starve a manipulator of the very emotional fuel they need to survive.
As you can see here, manipulators literally treat your emotional reactions like a reward. When you give them a high emotional reaction, anger, tears, frustration, the manipulator's power spikes. They got exactly what they wanted out of you. But when you give zero reaction, you give them zero reward. You completely kill their game.
So here is the exact step-by-step sequence of the cold art in action. Step 1, the manipulator provokes you. Step 2, you stay absolutely silent and indifferent. Step 3, their expected emotional reward is entirely denied. And step 4, because they are literally starving for a reaction, the manipulator loses interest and leaves to find an easier target. You win the game by simply refusing to play it.
Section 6. Detachment upgrades your perception.
Emotionally detaching yourself doesn't make you blind. Actually, it's the exact opposite. It makes you highly observant. It's almost like Batman surveying Gotham from above. When you pull your messy emotions out of the equation, you suddenly see true intentions clearly. You notice those hidden power dynamics. You protect yourself from deep disappointment. Think about it. When a friend comes to you with a problem, you give them great, objective advice, right? Because you aren't emotionally tangled up in their mess. Detachment allows you to apply that exact same crystal clarity to your own life.
As Machiavelli points out here, you really cannot afford to just endlessly play the nice guy if it means sacrificing your boundaries, your logic, and your own mental peace. Sometimes protecting yourself means you have to just stop blindly participating in the chaos, even if other people judge you for suddenly going cold. And honestly, this all boils down to a core philosophy: utilitarianism in action. Outcomes must be greater than feelings. Real emotional discipline means making choices based on the long-term, calculated outcome for your life and well-being, rather than caving to those temporary, fleeting feelings of guilt or the fear of being rejected by toxic people. So as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a pretty powerful question to think about. Look at your own life. Look at your workplace, your relationships. If you stop reacting today, if you master this cold art of absolute silence and emotional detachment, whose invisible strings will snap forever? It's time to take back your power. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.